The galaxy still remembered the war. A century later, many believed the void had consumed all the evidence. They were wrong. The scars remained, etched across the stars, in the silent wreckage of battles long past. They called it the graveyard of empires, an orbital junkyard of shattered pride and lost causes. Kaelen Thrace was its lone groundskeeper. His ship, the Tramp, was a rust bucket of repurposed parts, scraping a living where empires had died. Kaelen had been a soldier for the Terran Coalition. Now he was a scavenger. Kaelen sat hunched at the console PINGS, soft, insistent. Not another damned proximity alert. Just a piece of snapped armor plating, Kaelen, strip it and move on. The contact resolved itself. A Xylos scout vessel, a Thorn-class ship. It should have been cold. The enemy, the Xylos, the Coalition had called them the architects. They didn't build machines, they grew life. The scanner flashed a rare symbol, not radiation, not energy. Biological signature, faint. Kaelen knew curiosity was a quick way to get killed, but the signal pulsed again, a little stronger. It didn't feel like a beacon. It felt like a heartbeat, a dying one. All right, you beautiful wreck. Let's see what secrets you're keeping. Kaelen boarded the Xylos ship. The difference was immediate and visceral. The ship smelled of damp earth, rich spice, and the sharp metallic tang of blood. The walls were bone-like cartilage, interwoven with dormant veins. The ship was a tomb, yet the silence was heavy. He followed the erratic pulse of the biosignal toward the heart of the ship, the synaptic throne. The entrance to the bridge was partially melted open. He squeezed through the gap. In the center, fused to the synaptic throne, was the source of the signal, a Xylos woman. Her skin, the color of pale moonlight, was a canvas of wounds. Thick cables of biotech burrowed into her flesh, connecting her directly to the throne. She was Xylos' high blood. Royalty. Her blood was a conduit, visible nanites pulsing with a sickly, unstable light. Kaelen's vision swam. He saw fire, the scream of twisting metal, his unit ripped apart. He saw the weeks of torture, the biological agents used to peel back his mind. His hand instinctively flew to his pulse pistol. Monster! Then her liquid chrome eyes opened. They focused on him, not with hatred, but with a desperate animal terror. Please help me. Who are you? Kira, Princess Kira. A key, you're a weapon or a target. Either way, you are not my problem. He did not shoot. His soldier's vengeance warred with his scavenger's pragmatism. She was worth more alive than dead. He pulled out magnetic binders. Do not touch me. You don't have a choice in the matter, princess. He bound her hands to the throne. Before he could process his decision, the ship answered for him. A deep, resonant hum built. No, not now. What's happening? The ship, it's responding to the tech in my blood. It's waking up. The entrance sealed with a heavy, wet squelch. A predator ship dropped out of warp space. A hunter. They found me. The engines roared to life. Kaelen was trapped in a living prison with a dying princess. The universe tore itself apart as the ship made an uncontrolled warp jump. When the violence ceased, Kira's vacant pain was gone, replaced by a sharp, unnerving clarity. The wounds were already healing. That was invigorating. Kaelen is a human. She apologized, though insincerely, if it was too much for his fragile human physiology. Where are you taking us? The ship is following a dormant emergency protocol, taking her to the nearest safe harbor. She added that Kaelen was merely baggage. He demanded that she override the ship's programming. Override her own genetics, a charmingly primitive notion. This ship was an extension of her bloodline. He told her she was a monster. She countered that she was a survivor. She argued that humans merely endured, polluting the galaxy with noise and rust, while Xylos adapted and became stronger. Rage boiled over. Kaelen drew the combat knife he never parted with, the the shard of his past. The crystalline point rested just below her chin. She pointed out that he was holding a shard of glass against the throat of his only hope for survival. She challenged him, kill her and doom himself, or put his weapon away and listen. Vengeance warred with cold logic. He pulled the knife back. Talk. She explained she was intended to be a lock, a ceremonial sacrifice, the price of peace. But her father had embedded the nanobiotics as a fail-safe, a living key that could rewrite the code of war. The process was incomplete, leaving her unstable. He concluded that she was a ticking bomb. A poetic if crude assessment, yes. The ship shuddered. They had arrived at Port Noctis, a black market hub. He scorned the location, calling it a cesspool. She retorted that it was the only place that dealt in unregulated biotech. They needed a K7 matrix regulator. Kaelen freed her from the throne, but kept her bound. You don't have a choice in the matter, princess. Kaelen found a spare power conduit and with difficulty disconnected the primary biocables from her body. She gasped, but she was free of the throne. He kept her wrists bound with a short, high-energy filament. He threw her a heavy hooded scavenger's cloak, demanding she cover herself. Port Noctis, the stolen key. The air was thick, humid, and smelled of spice, hot metal, and unwashed bodies. She commented caustically that it smelled like her cousin's reptile pits. Kaelen kept one hand on his pistol, the other on the energy filament connected to Kira, pulling her along. He haggled with a four-armed Groyan merchant over the regulator, focused entirely on the price gouging. He did not notice Kira drift closer to a display. Suddenly, a commotion. Two reptilian thugs cornered a merchant. Kaelen's instinct was to ignore it, but then one shoved the old man to the ground. He intervened, telling the thugs the old man had paid his dues. The thug warned the human to mind his own business. Kaelen moved. His first punch was a brutal blow to the throat. He spun, kicking the second thug's legs out, pistol pressed to the first thug's head. Leave. They scrambled away. Kaelen holstered his weapon and turned back to the stall. Kira held the small crystalline regulator in her bound hands. She had stolen it while he was distracted. She announced that their transaction was complete. Run! They plunged into the throng. The Groyan's enraged shouts echoed behind them. They were near the docking bay when an amplified, chillingly familiar voice cut through the din. The bounty is mine. 5 million credits for the runaway princess. Kaelen looked up. A massive figure in obsidian armor, the Xylos tracker, stood on a sky bridge. Panic erupted. Blaster bolts started to fly. He shouted to run in a different direction. They sprinted. A stray shot ricocheted off a bulkhead and strikes Kira in the shoulder. She cried out, stumbling. The impact tore the cloak from her. In the dim light, her skin began to glow with an ethereal luminescence. Her golden blood seeped from the wound. A collective gasp went through the crowd. It's her, the celestial bloom. The bounty hunter landed in front of them, rifle raised. Nowhere left to run, Your Highness. Kira was already moving. With a surge of adrenaline, she spun, using the energy filament connecting their binders as a whip, catching the hunter's rifle and tearing it from his grasp. Kaelen lunged, slamming his shoulder into the hunter's chest. He dragged Kira the last few feet onto the Thorn ship's boarding ramp just as it began to retract. The ship's engines roared to life, pushing back the crowd. Kaelen sealed the door. They accelerated into space. The adrenaline faded. Kira collapsed, clutching her shoulder. The wound was deep. Kaelen looked down at her, the wounded, cornered girl. He felt the competing urges of hatred and responsibility. He knelt down, opening a medical kit. Hold still. He cut away the torn fabric, his fingers brushing against her strangely warm, faintly glowing skin. She hissed in pain as he applied the antiseptic. As he worked, dressing the wound, he observed the intricate patterns on her skin. He finished his work and stood up, avoiding her gaze. He had saved her. He did not know why. He turned to leave for the bridge. "Thank you, Kaelen." He paused, his hand on the doorway, but did not turn around. He was more conflicted than he had been in years. The map and the scars. The ship tore through the Veil Nebula. Kaelen stood on the bridge, watching the titanic silhouettes of dead Xylos world killers drift by. The silence between him and Kira was a taut wire of reluctant alliance. Kira sat on the deck. She had inserted the stolen regulator into a port on her forearm. The erratic pulsing of the nanobiotics smoothed into a steady glow. She announced that the instability was contained for now, but the core charge was still depleting. They needed to reach the core synapse. He asked what the synapse was. She explained it was not a place, but a nexus, the central hub from which the old empire controlled its armies and its biotechnical infrastructure, the mind of the Xylos war machine. She rose, moving with newfound steadiness. She pointed to the faint shimmering patterns beneath her skin. She stated that this was not decoration. It was a star chart, a set of coordinates, a genetic password. It led to the synapse. Her nanobiotics were a living key. He concluded that whoever controlled her controlled the map. She corrected him. Whoever controlled the map could access the synapse and rewrite the very code of war in the galaxy, reactivating the dormant fleet or issuing a command to deactivate all Xylos technology, ending any future war. Kaelen stared at her. She was the most powerful weapon in the known universe. She revealed that the new houses, particularly her sister, did not want to destroy the key. They wanted to dissect it, tear the map from her body, and use it to build an empire. A jarring alarm blared. Red lights flashed. They were approaching a planet far too quickly. He demanded to know what was happening. She explained it was an old imperial planetary defense system whose signal was being corrupted. The atmosphere was saturated with wild biotech from a failed terraforming project, confusing the ship systems. Their descent was uncontrolled. The ship screamed, its hull glowing white-hot. Kaelen strapped himself in as the vessel bucked and shuddered. The world of living memories. The ship crashed into the swampy earth of a ravine. The lights died. Silence. Kaelen, bruised and aching, carried the unconscious Kira out of the wreckage, grabbing his rifle and a survival pack. The air was thick, humid, and smelled of ozone and decay. The jungle was a riot of bioluminescent plants. Strange, chittering sounds echoed. He found a shallow cave and laid Kira down gently. Her skin was hot, and the patterns on her body were glowing erratically. As dusk fell, a strange shimmering rain began to fall, a fine glittering mist that hummed with low energy. Kaelen felt a profound disorientation. The edges of his vision softened. The chittering sounds deepened into whispers. He tried to stand, but his limbs were heavy. He looked at Kira. Her eyes were open, unfocused. She whispered that the sky was weeping light, showing memories of the dead. He realized it was a hallucinogen, an airborne spore they were breathing in. The shadows danced, taking on familiar shapes. He saw the faces of his fallen unit, their eyes accusing him. He saw the Xylos warrior who had killed SGT, Rostova. He saw Kira as the monster of his past and charged at her. She shrieked that he would not take it from her and grabbed a sharp rock. They circled each other, two prisoners of their own trauma. He lunged, she swung. The knife sliced her arm. The rock glanced off his temple. He tackled her. They fell to the ground, wrestling inches from mutual destruction. Then the shared insanity broke. Kaelen looked down into her terrified chrome eyes and saw not a monster, but a reflection of his own desperation. A choked, hysterical sound escaped him. It turned into a raw, ragged laugh. Kira stopped struggling. Confusion replaced fear. Then she too began to laugh, a full-throated peal that echoed through the cave. They collapsed, the fight drained from them. The fog in their minds receded, leaving a raw, painful clarity. He admitted he had almost killed her. She admitted she had almost caved in his skull, concluding they were a terrible pair. Kaelen explained the bioagent used on him in the prison camp, saying the storm felt like that. Kira confided that her sister, Lyra, had designed the torture protocols for enemies of the new state herself. Kira slowly pulled off the scavenger cloak. She turned, showing her side, where a long, jagged surgical scar ran below her ribs. She whispered that this was where the map was implanted. They had cut her open and woven the conduits into her neural pathways. Kaelen reached out, his fingers tracing the edge of the scar. Her skin was warm, electric. He leaned in. She pulled back at the last second, profound sadness crossing her features. She warned him that he wouldn't survive her. The nanobiotics meant her kiss could be a poison to his kind. A sharp crack of a pulse rifle cut through the jungle. Raiders. She noted they were after the tech and would tear them apart for the components in their bodies. He grabbed his rifle, stating they wouldn't let themselves be found. They fought the raiders side by side, a seamless dance of violence. When it was over, Kira sank to the floor of the cave, utterly exhausted, and fell asleep. Kaelen watched her. He knew with absolute certainty that he would let no one else have her. The calculated betrayal. Kaelen woke to find Kira gone. On the rock where she rested, a message, scrolled in drying golden blood, "Follow only if you trust me." He spent 2 hours preparing, using salvaged armor and fungi smears for a crude disguise. He jury-rigged a neural scrambler to fool low-level genetic scanners. He piloted the Leech shuttle to her destination, Sanctuary K7, a Xylos fortress. His disguise held for less than 15 minutes. A scanner archway flashed crimson. Human detected, contaminant breach. Kaelen was disarmed and dragged to the throne room. On a raised dais sat Lyra, Kira's sister. Standing beside the throne, head bowed in submission, was Kira. The fire was gone. Kaelen was forced to his knees. He searched Kira's face for a hint of a plan. He found only empty compliance. Lyra scorned the human pet Kira had brought and asked why she allowed him to live. Kira stated he was merely a tool for transport, nothing more. Betrayal was a blade, twisting in Kaelen's gut. Lyra asked what they should do with him, suggesting neural parasites. Kira advocated for a quick death, arguing that his mind was full of worthless coalition secrets, and his execution would prove her loyalty. Lyra laughed, delighted, and commanded that Kaelen be taken to the echo chamber, with Kira ordered to witness the execution. In the echo chamber, the guards flanked Kaelen. Kira commanded the guards to leave, claiming she needed privacy to learn her lesson and would deliver the human's heart herself. The guards bowed and exited. He demanded to know if she was a traitor. She silenced him, rushing to unfasten his binders. She explained that the final access point to the Synapse required 2 distinct genetic markers, one Xylos high blood and one non-Xylos. Lyra had failed to splice a hybrid. Kira stated she had brought him here because she needed him. He was her key. The anger dissolved. He questioned why she hadn't told him. She countered that Lyra had to believe she was broken and that Kaelen was a loose end. It was the only way to get him this close to the objective. He asked the next step. "No," she said, "now I have to kill you." She rose up on her toes, her hands cupping his face. She kissed him, the neurotoxin hit. Kaelen's limbs grew heavy, his vision tunneled. She whispered that it was a neurotoxin to mimic death, slowing his heart. It was the only way to get him out. She pleaded with him to survive. His knees buckled. She lowered him gently to the floor. The world dissolved into blackness. The furnace of revelation. Kaelen was aware but paralyzed. He felt himself being carried. He heard Lyra's voice, commanding his body be disposed of in the reclamation furnace. He was dumped onto a pile of other bodies. A conveyor belt groaned, carrying the corpses toward a distant red glow. The heat was immense. He fought the paralysis. Millimeter by painful millimeter feeling returned. He managed to twitch a finger. He was meters from the edge. With a surge of primal will, he rolled his body, tumbling from the conveyor belt and onto the grated floor, just as the bodies ahead of him slid into the fire. He lay there, gasping, convulsing as the neurotoxin receded. He heard Lyra and her chief medical officer from a nearby tunnel. He pressed himself into the shadows. The officer confirmed the extraction procedure was ready, and that the neural severance would be catastrophic for the host. Lyra accepted this, stating Kira was almost useful again, and commanded the officer to proceed with the extraction. The voices faded. Kaelen leaned against the wall, consumed by cold, burning rage. Kira had not known her sister planned her death. She was walking into her own execution. The last vestiges of his soldier identity died in the furnace's heat. He was not her key. He was her only hope. He checked his gear. His pistol was gone, but his knife, the shard of his past, was still at his belt. This was now a suicide mission. The Synapse, end me or enter me. Kaelen moved through the station like an apex predator. He executed 2 Xylos guards in a maintenance tunnel with brutal, silent efficiency. He found the heavily armored door to the Synapse, flanked by 2 enhanced guards. He targeted a high-pressure coolant pipe. His plasma torch exploded the pipe, spewing cryogenic mist, blinding the guards. Kaelen burst from the mist. He slammed into the first guard, his knife seeking the vulnerable joint. The second guard caught him high on the ribs, cracking bone. The guard raised a fist to finish him. Kaelen, fueled by pure fury, jammed his knife up under the guard's armored jaw. The enhanced soldier grabbed his wrist, crushing his bones. The crystalline blade of his knife shattered against the guard's reinforced spine. Kaelen was left holding a useless hilt, but the guard was dead. He was weaponless, injured, but the door to the Synapse was unguarded. The chamber was circular, sterile, bathed in harsh blue-white light. Kira was stretched out on a metallic table, held by energy restraints. She was conscious, her chrome eyes wide with silent terror. Lyra stood nearby. A medical officer adjusted a laser array over Kira's body. The intricate, luminous web of the neural map was exposed. The officer confirmed the neural interface was established and requested permission to begin severance. Proceed. Kaelen threw the heavy, broken hilt of his knife. It struck the medical officer in the temple. The man dropped. The laser array sparked and shut down. Lyra spun, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. Kaelen charged, slamming his body into the main control pedestal, tearing the surgical apparatus from its moorings. The stasis fields and restraints vanished. 2 enhanced guards moved to intercept him. Kaelen fought with the savagery of a cornered animal. A plasma bolt seared his shoulder. He stumbled. The final guard stood over him, rifle raised. A cry, a sound of pure rage. Kira, free from her restraints, launched herself from the table. She landed on the guard's back, her fingers hooking into the gaps in his armor. There was a wet tearing sound and the guard collapsed, a vital power conduit ripped from his neck. Kaelen tackled the remaining guard, driving him backward into a power terminal. A massive explosion of sparks. The guard went down. Lyra was gone, having vanished through a hidden exit. Kaelen staggered toward the table. Kira had slumped against it, clutching her side where the incisions were made. She was half conscious. Kaelen looked at the broken hilt in his hand. End me or enter me. His choice was made in a heartbeat. He let the broken hilt fall from his fingers. It clattered to the floor, the sound of a decade of grief being laid to rest. He knelt before her, cradling her face. "Survive this." He kissed her. The circuit was completed. Her mind crashed into his, her life, her fear. He felt his grief, his desperate need to save her. Their minds merged. Together, they reached out to the core synapse. The synapse flared with pure white light. A single command, born from their shared pain and reluctant hope, pulsed outward. "Sleep." The feedback was catastrophic. Kira screamed, her body convulsing, and collapsed. The light from her skin died. The chamber began to self-destruct. Kaelen lifted Kira and ran, carrying her out into the chaos of the corridors where civil war had erupted. He sprinted onto a long enclosed skybridge. A missile struck a support pylon, the structure GROANED. He leapt the last 10 meters just as the final section gave way. He landed hard, shielding Kira. They were alive, they were free, and they had just broken the galaxy. A map of their own. Kaelen held the controls of the shuttle. Beside him, Kira was still. The light of the neural map was extinguished. She stirred. "Did they do it?" "They did. The synapse is gone." She sat up, looking at her hands. She noted that the map was quiet now. She asked Kaelen what it felt like, being inside her mind. He replied simply. He finally understood. The news feeds confirmed the galactic turmoil. They were the two most wanted individuals in the universe. She suggested they go to Praxis, a neutral world where truth was the only law, and disputes were settled in the crucible of testimony. He grunted, acknowledging the risk of the crucible, where souls were put on trial. She insisted, saying they could not run forever. The truth of what happened must be told. Kira stood on the raised platform. She petitioned the crucible. The arena was plunged into her memory. The cold dread, the surgeons cutting her open, Lyra's chilling ambition, her desperate flight. The projection faded. A listener demanded Kaelen come forward. Kaelen walked the longest walk of his life. He lay on the second platform. The crucible was plunged into his personal hell. The burning destroyer, the bioagent, the screaming faces, the death of SGT. Rostova, the agony of survival. The memory faded. A current of hatred was palpable, but Kaelen focused his will, projecting the memories of the jungle cave, the shared laughter, and his final choice in the synapse. He stood up, looking at the silent thousands. He declared that her people had taken everything from him, but Kira was not her people. She had paid the price for their peace and had the right to live. The profound silence stretched. The lead listener stood, declaring a binding truce. The testimony of Kira and Kaelen Thrace would be the first brick in the foundation of a new law. Kaelen and Kira stood on a high balcony. He asked her what they would do now. She stated there was no we. Her people were in chaos and needed a leader to guide them away from Lyra's tyranny. She had to go back to build something new from the ruins. He nodded slowly. He prepared to leave the next morning. Kaelen was in the cockpit. Kira appeared at the entrance. She was in dark flight gear. She casually tossed a Xylos Royal Guard helmet onto the deck. He demanded to know what she was doing. She stated that her people would find their way. They did not need a princess to rule them. They needed an example of what it meant to be free. She closed the distance. "The war is over, Kaelen. My purpose as a weapon is over. My duty as an heir is over. I have rewritten my purpose. Let's fly." He reached out his hand, and she took it. The tramp lifted off, climbing above the stark black mountains of Praxis. They left behind politics, duty, and destiny. They were no longer a commander and a princess, no longer enemies. They were just two survivors heading for the stars, finally writing a map of their own.